So, whenever you're writing code, you need a way to remember things, right? A player's score, a user's name, the price of an item in a shopping cart. In this explainer, we're going to dive deep into exactly how Python handles this with one of its most basic, most powerful tools, variables.
And hey, right before we jump in, if you find this kind of breakdown useful, do me a favor and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more. Okay, let's do this.
Let's start with the most fundamental question there is. How does a program actually remember stuff? I mean, think about it. If your code calculates a result, or you ask someone for their name, how does it hold on to that piece of information so it can use it a second later?
Well, the answer is the variable. That's it. At its heart, a variable is just a name, a label that you give to a piece of data. This lets you store it and call it back up whenever you need it. It's the absolute bedrock of memory in your code.
Now, the best way I've found to think about a variable is to picture a simple labeled box. The name you give the variable, that's the label you write on the outside of the box. And the data, the actual value you're saving, that's what you put inside. And trust me, we're going to come back to this box idea a lot.
Okay, so we get the idea of the box, but how do we actually create these things in our code? It's time to open up the instruction manual and look at the rules for how you create and name them.
Now, Python is pretty relaxed about a lot of things, but with variable names, it's actually really specific. You can totally use letters, numbers, and the underscore. But, and this is a big but, look at the rules on the right. Your name can't start with a number. No weird symbols like the @ or $sign, no spaces, and you definitely can't use a word that Python already uses for a command like if or for. Let's see those rules in action, because it makes it way clearer. On the left, username and total marks, perfect. They make sense and they follow all the rules. But on the right, one name is a no-go because it starts with a number, and total dash marks won't work either. Python would see that hyphen and think you're trying to do subtraction. Okay, listen up, because this is a big one, and it trips up everybody when they're starting out. Python is case sensitive. What that means is a variable called name, all in lowercase, is a completely different box than a variable called name with a capital N. To Python, they have nothing to do with each other.
All right, enough rules. Let's get to the fun part and see how these variables actually work in the wild. Let's put this tool to work.
Remember our labeled box? Well, the cool thing is you're not stuck with what you first put inside it. You can change it. Here, we start by putting the number 10 in our box labeled X. Then, a little later, we decide to update it and put 20 in there instead. The old value, that 10, it's just gone.
And this right here, this is one of Python's superpowers. It's called dynamic typing. You can have your box X holding a number, like 10, and then in the very next line, you can toss that out and put a piece of text, like the word hello, into the exact same box. You never have to tell Python ahead of time what kind of stuff the box is going to hold. It's just incredibly flexible.
Python also has some really slick shortcuts for you. Instead of making your boxes one by one, you can do it all at once. You can assign different values to different variables in a single line, or you can take one value and assign it to a whole bunch of variables at the same time. It's a real time saver. Okay, let's get a little geeky for a second and peek under the hood. Let's take a look at how these boxes actually use your computer's memory. It's a little bit more clever than you might think. So check out this super simple piece of code. We make a variable a and we give it the value 10. Then we make a new variable b and we say it's equal to a. Seems straightforward, right? But what is really happening inside the machine? And here's the twist. You might think Python creates a second box and puts a new number 10 inside it for b. But it doesn't. The value 10 exists in your computer's memory just once. What you've actually done is put two different labels, a and b, that are both pointing to that exact same spot in memory. So variables are less like boxes and more like sticky notes pointing to data. Now, building on that idea of where data lives in memory, let's quickly touch on a concept called scope. All this means is where your variables are allowed to exist and where your program can actually see them. The easiest way to think about scope is like different rooms in a house. A local variable is born inside a specific function, which means it can only be seen and used inside that one room. It's private. A global variable, though, is created out in the main hallway of your program, so it can be seen from anywhere. It's a simple idea, but it's so important for keeping big programs organized. Okay, you have totally got the fundamentals down now. So let's wrap up with some pro tips and best practices that are going to take your code from just working to being clean, professional, and awesome.
Seriously, this is probably the most important habit you can possibly build. Always, always give your variables meaningful names. Age equals 20 tells you exactly what that number means. X equals 20, that tells you absolutely nothing. And the standard way to do it in Python is called snake case, where you connect words with an underscore. It just makes your code a million times easier to read.
So what about values that you never ever want to change, like the value of pi? Python doesn't really have a way to lock a variable down. Instead, we use a community agreement, a convention. We write the variable name in all capital letters. This is like a big blinking sign for other programmers that says, hey, don't touch this value. It's not supposed to change.
And here's a fun little party trick for you. In most programming languages, if you want to swap the values of two variables, you need a third, temporary one to help out. But in Python, it's just one beautiful, clean line of code. You just say A, B equals B, A. And boom, they're swapped. It's just so elegant.
So, to wrap it all up, let's do a super quick summary. You create variables with an equal sign. Remember, they're just labels pointing to values in memory. The naming rules are strict, and don't forget, Python cares about capitalization. You can change a variable's value and even its type whenever you want. And please, for readable code, use meaningful snake case names.
And that's a wrap. You now have the fundamental tool for making your programs remember things, for storing and managing information. So the only real question left is, now that you have this power, what are you going to build?